When people ask me about my childhood, I usually change the subject. It's not that it was terrible, I always had food to eat and a place to live. But let's just say it wasn't a happy, perfect family like on TV. My name is Janet, and now that I'm 33, I'm finally ready to share my story. Not because I want people to feel sorry for me, but because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. I was 7 years old when everything changed. That's when my little sister, Lauren, was born 3 months early. I still remember my dad rushing to the hospital in the middle of the night while my Aunt Kelly came over to take care of me. Everyone was so worried about the baby, and honestly, so was I. I didn't know much about premature babies back then, but from the way the adults looked, I knew something was wrong. Lauren survived, but she was very weak. Our home became a mix of a hospital and a germ-free zone. My mom was always cleaning, and the smell of disinfectant became as familiar as the smell of dinner. Every surface in the house sparkled, and if I even sniffled, my mom's eyes would narrow with worry. Not for me, but for Lauren. "Janet, was that a cough?" she would ask. "We can't take any chances," she'd say. "Pack your bag. You're going to Grandma's for a few days." And just like that, I'd be sent away, either to Grandma's house or to Aunt Kelly's, like I was carrying some kind of disease. It happened so often that I started keeping a packed bag in my closet, ready to go. At first, I tried to think of these trips as little vacations. But after a while, it just felt like I was being pushed out of my own home. So I threw myself into school. I wanted to make my parents proud, to get their attention in a different way. I got straight A's, joined the debate team, and even won a regional science fair. But no matter what I did, it never seemed to matter. My achievements were always ignored, lost behind Lauren's latest doctor's visit or small improvement. "Look, Mom, I got first place in the science fair." I would hold up my trophy and say, "Look, Mom, I won." But instead of being happy, she would just say, "That's nice, honey. Did you wash your hands? Lauren's been feeling a little sick today." The worst part? When Lauren turned 7, she suddenly stopped getting sick. It was like someone flipped a switch, and she became a perfectly healthy kid. But nothing changed with Mom and Dad. They had spent so many years protecting her that they didn't know how to stop. And Lauren? She quickly learned that acting weak could get her anything she wanted. High school was supposed to be my time to shine. I was doing everything right, good grades, clubs, everything. But in our house, Lauren's problems always came first. I remember one parents' night very clearly. My chemistry teacher was telling my parents about my chances of getting a science scholarship. "Janet is one of our brightest students," Mr. David said, smiling. "She has a real future in." Before he could finish, my mom's phone rang. Lauren was having a crisis at home with the babysitter. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Mom asked, already grabbing her things. Through the phone, I could hear Lauren fake crying. "I can't find my favorite pen for homework. The one Janet gave me is stupid." And just like that, parents' night was over. They rushed home to comfort Lauren over a pen. A pen. I stood there watching them leave while Mr. David awkwardly patted my shoulder. After that night, they stopped coming to my events completely. "It's just easier this way," they said. No more interruptions from Lauren's tantrums. When I won the state debate championship, they didn't even put my trophy on the shelf. "Lauren gets anxious when she sees other people's achievements," Mom explained as she tucked my trophy into a drawer. The day I got accepted into college should have been a huge deal. I had a full scholarship, tuition, books, everything covered. I was so excited. But when I told my family at dinner, Lauren just rolled her eyes. "Whatever," she said. "Now you can finally move out, and I can turn your room into my gaming paradise. I'm thinking 2 monitors, maybe a streaming setup." That night, I started counting down the days until I could leave for college. The next 5 years flew by. I spent as much time as possible in my dorm or the library. Home was just a place I visited for required family dinners, where Lauren always stole the spotlight with stories about her latest middle school drama. By the time I was 24, I had my degree and landed a job as a manager at Timothy & Company. The pay wasn't great, it was just enough to rent a tiny apartment and buy cheap grocery store sushi. But I didn't care. Just having my own space felt like winning the lottery. One day, While scrolling through social media during my lunch break, I saw an ad for an investment course. Learn to make your money work for you. Usually, I would scroll past things like that, but something made me stop. The course wasn't cheap, but I could afford it if I lived on ramen noodles for a month. That course changed everything. The instructor, Kenneth, had a way of making complicated investment ideas seem simple. I started small, putting a few $100s into promising tech stocks. Then I added a little more. I studied market trends like my life depended on it. I took advanced courses from top investors and learned about risk management and how to build a strong investment portfolio. My first big win came from a small AI company that no one was paying attention to. I put in $1,000, and in just 4 months, it turned into $10,000. Then I invested in a biotech startup, and my money tripled. Before I knew it, my side business was making more than my actual job. I'll never forget the morning I realized I could quit. I was at my desk, pretending to care about boring reports when my investment app pinged. Another stock had reached my target price. I did the math. My investment income was now 4 times my salary. Right then and there, I typed up my resignation letter. Even after quitting, I kept going to those Sunday family dinners. I don't know why. Maybe it was just habit. Maybe a small part of me still hoped things would change. I would sit there, pushing Mom's overcooked chicken around my plate, listening to them talk about Lauren while my investment app kept pinging in my pocket. "Janet, you're still at Timothy's, right?" Mom would ask sometimes, not really waiting for an answer. "Yep, same job," I'd say, watching their attention drift away before I even finished speaking.
It was easier that way.
No need to explain that I had quit 3 years ago. No need to mention that I now made more money in a single day than I used to make in a month. Lauren was the star of every dinner. She had gotten into Western University, one of those fancy schools where tuition costs more than a house. "It's so expensive," Mom would say, sighing, but her voice was full of pride. "But Lauren deserves the best education. We've taken out loans, of course, but it's worth it for our little girl's future." Lauren would smile, twirling her pasta. "My roommate has a Gucci backpack. Everyone at school comes from such good families." The message was clear. Unlike our family, Janet. Unlike you. Then one Sunday, I walked in to find Mom crying over bills. Dad was at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of paperwork, his reading glasses slipping down his nose. "The property taxes went up again," he muttered. And with Lauren's tuition, I watched them struggle and thought about all the times they had chosen Lauren over me. And yet, they were still my parents. That night, I set up an automatic transfer, $22,000 a month, to my parents' account. When I told them, Mom actually hugged me. It was the first time in years she had shown me any real affection. "Oh, Janet, this will help so much," she said. For a moment, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe they would finally see me differently. But later that night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen after dinner. "We should send some of Janet's money to Lauren," Mom was saying. "At least $600. The poor thing feels so out of place among all those rich students." "Good idea," Dad agreed. "She needs to keep up appearances. Maybe she can finally buy that designer bag she's been wanting." I stood there, frozen, shaking my head. They weren't even grateful. They were already planning how to use my money to help Lauren fit in with her rich classmates. For a second, I wanted to walk in and tell them everything, that I had quit my job years ago, that I had built an investment portfolio worth more than they could imagine, that I could buy an entire designer store if I wanted to. But I didn't. I just stood there, listening, realizing that no matter what I did, I would always come second. By the time I turned 30, I was ready for a change. My investments had grown beyond anything I had ever imagined, and I was tired of wasting money on rent. After months of searching, I found the perfect apartment, a safe building, a great view of the city. Nothing too fancy, just a beautiful space that felt like home. The best part? I could buy it outright. No loans, no mortgage, no debt. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, listening to my footsteps echo off the hardwood floors. This place was mine, all mine. I had done this on my own, without anyone's help, without anyone's approval. A few days later, Mom called to check in, which really meant she wanted to talk about Lauren. "I'm moving," I mentioned casually. "Did you find a cheaper rental?" she asked, barely paying attention. I could hear her shuffling papers on the other end. "Just a different place," I said. "Better location." "Well, don't spend too much on rent, honey. You know how unstable the job market is for people in your position." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. If only she knew that my position meant managing millions in investments, not sitting at a desk at Timothy's. At the next family gathering, Aunt Kelly asked about my new place. Before I could answer, Mom spoke up. "Janet's renting a new apartment," she said quickly. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to the real star of the evening. "But wait until you hear about Lauren's latest accomplishments." I sat back and watched the usual scene unfold, relatives excitedly talking about Lauren's bright future while giving me pitying glances. "Lauren's going places," Dad said proudly. "Not that we're surprised. She's always been the real achiever. She already has companies fighting over her." Unlike some people who settle for mediocrity, my cousin whispered to his wife, loud enough for me to hear. I took a sip of my wine and thought about the stock trade I had made that morning, the one that earned me more money than my cousin made in a whole year. But I stayed quiet. Let them think what they wanted. Then came Lauren's graduation party. Mom and Dad went all out, fancy catering, expensive decorations, everything. I noticed they used the money I sent them to help pay for it, but at this point, I was used to that. Lauren walked around in her cap and gown like she had just won the Nobel Prize. When she spotted me standing by the punch bowl, she made a beeline toward me, holding her diploma like it was a trophy. "Look at this, Janet," she said, shoving it in my face. "Western University. Not some state school, like you went to. And I already have interviews lined up with top companies. I'm not going to end up pushing papers like you." I took another sip of punch. "Congratulations, Lauren. That's all you have to say? Aren't you jealous? I mean, I'm going to be so successful, and you're just, well, you." She stood there, waiting for me to admit that she was better than me. I could have told her about my investment portfolio, about my fully paid apartment, about how I made more money before my morning coffee than she would in her entire first year of work. But what was the point? Instead, I just shrugged and walked away, leaving her standing there, holding her diploma like a shield against her own insecurities. For months later, Lauren was still unemployed. All those companies that were supposedly fighting over her? Turns out, they weren't that impressed with her expensive degree after all. Meanwhile, the loan payments started rolling in. One evening, my phone rang. "Janet, do you have a minute to talk?" Mom asked, her voice carefully measured. "It's about Lauren's student loans." She paused, probably for dramatic effect. "They're really crushing us, honey. And with all our other bills, I hate to ask, but could you possibly—" "How much do you need?" I asked, already knowing I would regret it. "Well, if you could increase your monthly help to $4,000, that would be such a blessing." I thought about all the times they ignored my achievements, all the times Lauren had mocked me. But I also thought about my bank account, comfortable, sitting at 7 figures, something my family knew nothing about. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll set up the new amount starting next month." Mom's "thank you" was barely out of her mouth before she started planning how to spend it. "This will help so much with Lauren's loan payments. And maybe we can buy her some proper interview clothes." A few weeks later, Lauren finally got a job at the same company where Dad had gone to college with the HR director. The irony wasn't lost on me when she ended up with the title of manager. One weekend, I stopped by my parents' house and found Lauren lying on the couch, scrolling through apartment listings on her phone. "Ugh, everything is so expensive," she complained. "I can't believe I have to live here with Mom and Dad. This is so embarrassing." "You could look at smaller apartments," I suggested. "Or maybe something outside the city center?" She looked at me like I had told her to live in a dumpster. "I need to be in the right neighborhood, Janet. Not that you'd understand. Some of us have standards." I glanced around at our parents' simple living room, the same one where she was living for free, but I kept my mouth shut. She tossed her phone aside and sighed. "This is just temporary. Unlike you, I'm not going to be stuck as a manager forever. I have potential. The Thanksgiving plan. As Thanksgiving got closer, Mom went into her usual hosting panic. Every year, she insisted on cooking everything herself, turning the kitchen into a stress-filled disaster zone. But this year was different. I don't know what I'm going to do, she moaned over the phone a week before the holiday. I sprained my back pulling Lauren's laundry out of the dryer, and now I can barely stand up straight. How am I supposed to cook for 30 people? Why don't you let me handle it? I offered. I can have everything catered from that new restaurant downtown. Mom gasped, clearly relieved. You're such a good daughter. I don't know what we'd do without you. In the background of our video call, I caught a glimpse of Lauren rolling her eyes dramatically. Mom's praise, even a little, was clearly ruining her day. Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving Day started like any other family gathering. The food arrived right on time, and I helped Mom set everything up while trying to ignore Lauren's constant complaints. Store-bought stuffing will never taste as good as homemade, she muttered. I had brought my laptop along because the Asian markets were opening during dinner, and I had some investments to check on. I set it up in my old room and left it running while I joined the family. The food was amazing, definitely better than Mom's usual dry turkey. As everyone settled in with their plates, Mom brought up her back injury again. I was so worried about how I'd manage the cooking, she told a whole table of aunts, uncles, and cousins. But Janet stepped in and arranged for all this wonderful catered food. Wasn't that thoughtful? That's really nice of you, Janet, Aunt Kelly said with a smile. That must have been expensive. Oh, it's nothing, I said, trying to change the subject. I'm just glad everyone's enjoying it. Mom nodded, looking proud. She's doing well enough at that management job to help us out quite a bit. It was probably the first time in years she had bragged about me. I saw Lauren's face darken. She suddenly pushed her chair back and stormed out of the room. At first, I thought she was just throwing another one of her usual tantrums, but something felt different this time. Moments later, she came back, holding my laptop with a smug smile that made my stomach drop. Let's see just how well Janet is really doing, she announced loudly, looking around the table. Since she's so generous, I bet she won't mind if I show everyone her bank account. Time to prove what a loser she really is. My heart pounded. I jumped up from my chair. Lauren, don't. But it was too late. She spun the laptop around for everyone to see. My banking app was still open from when I had checked it earlier. The room went dead silent. Lauren's face turned pale like she had seen a ghost. Her hand shook so badly, I thought she might drop my laptop. Lauren, Mom asked, concerned. What's wrong? What does it say? Lauren's voice came out barely above a whisper. $8 million. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear everything. The ticking of Mom's old kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my cousin's fork dropping onto his plate. There must be some mistake, Aunt Kelly said, leaning in to get a better look. Janet's a manager at Timothy's. I let out a slow breath. I haven't worked at Timothy's for years, I said calmly. I quit to focus on investing full-time. I studied the markets, took courses, learned everything I could, and I got good at it. Really good. Lauren looked at me, her face pale. You mean you're rich? Her voice cracked on the last word. I nodded. I've been investing for years now. Started small, learned as I went. Yes, I have $8 million in that account. And no, I wasn't hiding it. You all just never asked. The silence lasted only 4 seconds before Mom's scream shattered it. $8 million? She jumped up from her chair, her face turning bright red. You have $8 million and you've been letting us struggle all this time? I stared at her, shocked. Struggle? I repeated. I send you $4,000 every month. You're a millionaire, she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch I didn't even know was possible. Your sister has student loans. We have bills. How could you be so selfish? So greedy. Dad joined in, his face twisted with anger. We raised you better than this, Janet. To think you've been hoarding money while your own family suffers. Something inside me snapped. Years of being the second choice, the afterthought, the reliable but unimportant daughter. All of it came rushing out. Hoarding money? Are you serious? I laughed, but there was no joy in it. Where's the money you saved for Lauren's college, Mom? Oh, wait, you didn't save anything because you spent it all on her endless wants and needs. But funny thing, you didn't pay for my college either, remember? I got a full scholarship while Lauren went to her fancy private university on loans. That's different. Mom snapped. Lauren needed. Lauren needed. Lauren wanted. It's always about Lauren. I was standing now too, my voice shaking with years of frustration. Well, guess what? My money is mine. I earned every penny of it. $4,000 is nothing to you. Mom yelled. You should be sending us at least $20,000 a month. We're your parents. I let out a wild laugh. $20,000? You want $20,000 a month? For what? So you can keep spoiling your precious Lauren? I turned to my sister, who was now shrinking back in her seat. You wanted to prove I was a loser, right? Well, surprise. The sister you've looked down on for years, the one you mocked for being just a manager. Turns out she's the successful one. How does that feel? The whole table sat frozen, fork still in the air, watching like it was some kind of nightmare tennis match. Well, if you're so successful, Mom spat, then you can certainly afford to help your family more. It's your duty. My duty. I walked over to Lauren and snatched my laptop from her hands. My duty ended the day you decided Lauren was the only daughter that mattered. She's the one with all the potential, remember? Well, let her fulfill that potential and help you pay the bills. Aunt Kelly tried to step in. Maybe we should all just calm down. But there was no calming the storm. Mom and Dad were both shouting now, their voices overlapping in a mess of accusations and demands. Lauren had started crying, her usual trick when things didn't go her way. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked out of my childhood home, Mom screaming still echoing behind me as I got into my car. The aftermath. Before I even got home, the messages started. My phone buzzed over and over, calls and texts from Mom, Dad, and Lauren. At first, they were angry demands. Then came the guilt trips. I tried responding at first, hoping maybe they would finally understand. But it was like talking to a wall. They didn't want to understand. They just wanted access to my bank account. Then Mom took it to social media. Her post was a masterpiece of fake heartbreak. Absolutely devastated to learn that my eldest daughter has become a millionaire while watching her own family struggle. She refuses to help her sister with student loans or support her aging parents. Money truly changes people. Please pray for Janet to remember her family values. The comments poured in. Family. Friends. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had a lot to say about me. How could she be so heartless? I always knew there was something off about her. What kind of person abandons their family like this? Mom liked every single comment, adding crying emojis and replying with thank you for understanding. The relatives who had been there for the Thanksgiving meltdown stayed quiet. But their silence didn't help much against the flood of family friends calling me everything from ungrateful to evil. That was the last straw. I opened my banking app and stared at the automatic transfer, $4,000 a month. They had called it pocket change. With one click, I canceled it. Then, I sent Mom one final message. I've canceled the monthly transfers. I'm done being your A-team. Don't contact me again. But they didn't take the hint. The calls increased, coming at all hours. Lauren started calling from different numbers when I blocked hers. Dad left long, rambling voicemails about family duty. Mom's social media posts became even worse. I blocked everything, their numbers, emails, and social media accounts. But I knew they wouldn't stop there. The final step. Jeffrey. I called down to my building's concierge. I need to add some names to the do not admit list. I gave him their names, descriptions, and even showed him pictures. He nodded, making careful notes. Sure enough, the very next day, Jeffrey called me. Your parents and sister just tried to force their way in, he said. They caused quite a scene in the lobby, threatened to call the police. I wasn't even surprised. That night, I opened my laptop and started looking at real estate in other states. Maybe it was time for a fresh start. Somewhere far away. Some people might call it running away. I call it setting boundaries. They had years of chances to treat me like family. They chose to ignore my achievements. They chose to mock my success. They chose to put Lauren first every single time. Now, they've shown me exactly how they see me, and I feel no obligation to keep them in my life. As I scroll through listings in cities where they'll never find me, I feel nothing but relief. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away, even from family.